The reality is that about 20% of the people in America are in church on a regular basis, and that 80% are not. Now, I want us to take kind of an informal poll, a JIBC poll. This is the your guess poll, so there's no right or wrong to this. I'm not going to trick you. It's just an opinion. And so I want to talk just for a moment, just our opinion. For those that are not in church today, for the 80% of America that are not in church, generally speaking, how do you think they feel about these topics? And then I'm going to ask you a series of topics. So if you think they generally feel positive, this is how I want to know. I want a thumbs up. Thumbs up is they generally feel positive about this topic. If you think they generally feel negative, of course it's a thumbs down. And if you think they're just kind of so-so, it's just kind of a so-so. Now, by the way, in Romania, that's the sign you use if you're trying to hitch a ride with somebody. They don't do this. They actually do this. So somebody will stop by and give you a ride if you ever need that in Romania. All right, so I want to take a look at this. This is just your opinion, okay? But I want you to hold it up so we can kind of get a feel for how we're thinking. So generally speaking, the 80% of folks who don't attend church on a regular basis, how do you think they generally feel about God? More positive, more negative, or so-so? Hold them up so we can kind of see them. All right, we have a great mixture. I see a lot more thumbs. I see a lot more thumbs up. I see a lot of hands wagging. I don't see too many down, but some down. I think that's probably accurate because even in America, even people who aren't necessarily in church, there still is kind of a God consciousness. And it's okay. The fact that there's a disconnect between believing in God and doing something about it doesn't bother our society. But generally speaking, I think that's true. Now, about the person Jesus Christ, do you think, generally speaking, in America, Jesus is popular, not popular, or so-so? Let me kind of hold your hands up so we can kind of see that together. All right, I see a lot more waggons on this one. I see some hands up. I don't see too many down. That's probably about accurate. If you read like a Time magazine and they're doing something on Christianity, usually Jesus scores pretty good. Jesus scores kind of high. There's actually a book out by the title, We Love Jesus, We Don't Like His Church. I think that in America, that's probably kind of accurate, that people kind of like Jesus. Even Muslims, by the way, Muslims respect and revere Jesus. Just about all religions would respect and revere Jesus. There are a few exceptions to that. So Jesus kind of gets good press, or at least they're not negative. Now, how about this broad topic? I'm not going to interpret it for you. I'm going to leave it broad intentionally. Spirituality. Is spirituality in America popular, unpopular, or so-so? Hold them up here so we can see. All right, I'm seeing more hands down this time, but I'm seeing a lot. How many of you have heard of a lady named Oprah Winfrey? Most of us are aware of Oprah. Now, Oprah had Christian roots, very solid Christian, evangelical, born-again, Bible-believing roots. It would be hard to tell that today, though, wouldn't it? But it's not hard to tell that she believes in spirituality. Whatever that means, she is a very spiritual person. She's just not necessarily what we would consider Bible-believing evangelical Christian. But she certainly is a spiritual person, and often the books that she promotes, they will become bestsellers, and they're often about spiritual things. Pastor Ted talks about that in America we have random thoughts of spirituality. It doesn't really kind of matter what it is, but America kind of is okay or even up on spirituality. Now, here's the one. Generally speaking, the 80% of the folks who don't come to church, how do they feel generally about church? Let's see those. I don't see anyone up, and I don't see anybody questioning. We basically have got that one down. Now, why is that? How is it that God kind of gets okay press, or at least kind of so-so press? Jesus kind of gets good press, or at least so-so press. Spirituality in America gets good press, but the church gets bad press. I think this is accurate, by the way. I think the reflection of your straw vote was accurate. Well, sometimes we deserve that, don't we? Sometimes we deserve the kind of reputation. The church has done some crazy things. You know, they see things on the news like the PTL scandal, or they hear something in a local family of faith, or they don't quite understand really. One of the common things is there's hypocrites at church. I'm better than the people at church, and I say, but that's the wrong model. If you're a believer, that's the wrong model, isn't it? You don't compare yourself to someone else, because in the church we have all kinds of folks. We have folks who have been walking with the Lord, and they're strong and moral and upright and virtuous and filled with the Spirit. And we have people that are born again, but they're just starting, and they're still struggling with old nature and new nature, and sometimes the old nature wins out. And so there's all kinds of varying degrees there. But there's also, one of the polls that I was reading said, here are some of the reasons why people say they're not necessarily all that favorably inclined toward church. Why the negative perception? Number one, the response is sometimes nobody likes to be preached at. Now, I'm in a profession where when I hear that and two people are talking and somebody says, don't preach at me, I'm going, well, wait a minute, that could be a good thing. That ought to be a good thing, not a bad thing. But typically thinking, when we think about being preached at, we think about being made to feel negative, being made to feel guilty. A friend of mine we were talking to about getting married, and we were going over the wedding ceremony. They said, well, listen, whatever you decide, Pastor, we trust you. And I said, yeah, but let's tweak this and make it uniquely your wedding. They said, no, whatever you decide is okay with us. They said, when we come to church, we know that you're positive. We don't worry about, are you going to make us feel guilty, that we'll leave feeling worse than when we came. Now, really, how is it that people have the perception when they come to church, they actually will end up leaving feeling worse than when they came? Shouldn't we be a place of hope and light and help and encouragement? Of course we should. But that's one of the reasons. The second reason some people give is the drug problem. Not the kind of drugs you're thinking about. The old statement about, I don't go to church because my parents drugged me to church when I was a kid. Anybody was that category? When we were children, of course, man, Dad picked us up, me and my brother, and he took us to church with him. He didn't send us to church. He took us to church. And we got to vote about it every Sunday, whether we wanted to go to church or not. But we always voted Dad's way because the consequences weren't all that pleasing. Well, listen, for parents who are bringing children to church, you keep on doing it. Don't you worry about, well, if I bring them to church, maybe they'll resent it. You made them brush their teeth. If they don't brush their teeth will fall out. You force them to brush their teeth because it's good. You force them to go to school because they need an education. And you force them to come. You encourage them. You set the way, but you bring them because it does make a difference. And in spite of all the pressures that kids face, the number one influencers in their life still are their parents. And so you have that opportunity. And so as long as you have the opportunity, as long as there's daylight, do good and encourage them. The third thing is, some people say we don't like coming to church because they're always asking for money. Well, I can understand that in our day's economy and the way things are going. But you notice in our church, when we handle money issues, we do it through the mail. Part of it is because we don't want to give the appearance that whenever you come, the only thing we're going to talk about is money. We just don't do it that way. And then the last one is, sometimes they say it's just not relevant to where we live. I don't come to church because the music's not relevant or the message isn't relevant or whatever. They just don't quite get it. But that's really okay, because gathering together, while anybody is welcomed, it does make more sense to those who are already in the family. If we're going to sing the songs of Zion, it helps to know where Zion is, okay? So it really is kind of more for us at times. Well, I want us to take a look at that. Now, here's another question. All right, we talked about how they feel about God, how they feel about Jesus, how they feel about spirituality, how they feel about church. How do you think the 80% on the outside feel about parties? Let me see your hands. Yeah, most of them. In fact, if you had a Bic, it'd be good to say, yeah, man, they like the parties. And so I want us to take a look at that, because here is one way we have of reaching people that's different from just the Operation Andrew inviting them to church. This is a different approach to telling people that we love you and care about you and want you to experience the life of God. And so let's take a look at that. In Mark chapter 2, I want us to read the story about Jesus calling one of his disciples. It's a guy named Levi. It's the exact same name, the same person as Matthew. Levi and Matthew are the same person. All right, verse 13. Mark 2, verse 13. Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake, and a large crowd came to him. Now, by the way, he had been in the synagogue. Was there a large crowd in the synagogue? Not so much. 20%, 80%, even in Jesus' day, was outside the synagogue. So there was a large crowd, but they were on the outside. Okay. So as he walked along, he saw Levi, or Matthew, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. That was his job. He was a tax collector. Follow me, Jesus told